in the world do you buy an apartment complex? It's actually a group of people that buys them together, and then you share in the profits.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer, ADP. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. Glad you're with us today. Thank you again for everybody that's been messaging me on the side saying they're binge listening to our episodes. Greatly appreciate, your loyalty there. And we always want to look forward to bringing you excellent guests with excellent track records, ways that they can educate us, on investing, in real estate. I've got another excellent guest with me today, Camilla Jeffs. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you again for jumping in. It was good to catch up with Camilla off the side. Camilla and I haven't previously met until today, so this was the first time, and I look forward to getting to know a little bit more about her, both in this podcast episode and after once we jump off. Just a quick bio on Camilla. She is the founder of Steady Stream Investments, a passive investing education company primarily serving Gen X women. And she's a multiple business owner and mom of five, and lives on a quiet farm.
Yes.
Let's start with something a little bit more untraditional. Let's talk about those 5 kids. I've got 4 of them, but I couldn't imagine having yet one more.
Well, I did cheat, and I had twins in there, so.
And full disclosure, I did too. So that's how I got to 4. Yeah.
That's funny. Yes. Yeah. So I do. I have 5 kids, and I had them all within an 8-year time span. So they're all pretty close together. And they're all teenagers now for the most part. I've got one who's in her early 20s, but everybody else is teenagers, and it's so fun. It's so fun. For those of you who are parents who have littles, the teenage years, don't be afraid of them. Everybody says they're so bad, and I just think it's so fun because they actually can have real conversations. They are good at sports now instead of being terrible at it. And we just have a great time. I don't have to pack their clothes when we travel anymore. It's nice. It's nice.
Well, I've got interesting. You should highlight sports there. So I've got my youngest is 10, my oldest is 16. And there's a enormous difference, in the talent level of a 10-year-old versus a 16-year-old. And I'm blessed to be able to coach, on their teams. And so sometimes it's hard for me to go from coaching a 16-year-old all the way down to a 10-year-old because I tend to want to coach the 10-year-old the same way that I just got done coaching the 16-year-old, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, you have to definitely adjust. So I coach my daughter's volleyball team, and they're all 13. And so, yeah, it's very different because I used to be the head coach for a high school soccer team too. And that skill level and the emotional level is different too. So you gotta be careful.
Yep. I hear you there on the emotional side. So let's talk a little bit more about Steady Stream Investments. How did that come to be? And was there a story prior to that? I mean, I assume that you've got some background in real estate investing from either an active perspective, passive investor. Just kind of unpack that for us.
Yeah. So my real estate investing journey started about 20 years ago. My husband and I got married young, and we were both going to college trying to get our bachelor's degree. And we both were committed to do that without student loans. And so we were both working and going to college. And so that equation equals poor, very poor. We had hardly any money to spend. And so when we tried to find housing, we found the cheapest. We were just looking for the cheapest thing where we could live. So we were living in someone's converted garage apartment, and it wasn't even very nice converted garage apartment. And the lady who owned it, she came around to collect rent one day, and I knew she owned many rentals around the city. And I asked her, and I just took a second and I just said, "Hey, can you tell me more about how you did this?" Because I was curious, right? And she said, "Oh, and she told me her story, but then she suggested to me that my husband and I should purchase our own house." And I was like, "Lady, no, you don't understand. We're living in your garage apartment. We can't afford a house." And she said, "No, no, this is what you do. You get a house that has a basement apartment in it, and then you rent out that apartment." And I was like, I still don't know, still skeptical. But then I dug into it, started learning more about it, and that's exactly what we did. So we used owner-occupied financing, which is the lowest down payment that you had to come up with. So we only had to come up with 3%. You get the best financing and the best interest rates. And we went from living in a nasty garage apartment to a 6-bedroom home that had, of course, had a basement apartment in it, and it even had a pool in the backyard. And we paid less living there than we did in the garage apartment. And that's when I was like, whoa, real estate is really interesting. This is fascinating how I can live and own this my own place. And that's what really got me interested in real estate. And then, fast forward a couple of years, I gave birth to my twin daughters. So I had 3 kids, 3 and under. And there was no way for me to actually get a W-2 and afford childcare for those 3.
Right.
Like my earning potential was not strong enough to support that. So we decided I was going to be the stay-home parent. And I got a little frustrated in that role in the terms of income. And I just felt like I wasn't, of course I was contributing to the family because I was taking care of 3 kids. But I wanted to contribute monetarily in some way, and I felt like I had the intelligence and the drive. But the income, I couldn't figure out how to bring in income. I tried to dabbled in a bunch of little businesses. But then one day I came across an article that said, "Become the CFO of your family." And I was like, oh, I like that. And as more I looked into it, I realized bringing in the income is only one small piece of running a full financial organization, right? There's so many other facets to running this organization. And my family is the first financial organization that I have to learn how to run. And so
Mm-hmm.
I decided to just take that role on full force and started diving into figuring out investing and figuring out budgeting and saving and all of the financial things. And I tried really hard to learn the stock market. I was like reading lots of books, trying to understand it, but it just was not clicking. Probably because it's not tangible. Because I'm a tangible person. I like to touch and feel things instead of just think about them. And so I was like, real estate is probably where we need to go. And so then we started doing the live-in flip method. And live-in flip is where you buy a fixer-upper, again, using owner-occupied financing. You get the lowest down payment and you move in. And then you live in a construction mess for a while and you fix it all up and then you move out. And then there's also a tax strategy there where if you live there 2 years and then rent it for 3 and then sell, then it's tax-free. There's no capital gains tax. And so that was the method that we chose to do because we were stuck in DIY mode and we didn't know how to use other people's money. Creative financing made me want to throw up. I didn't even know how that worked or what to do with it. And so we were using all of our own time, our muscles. I learned how to tile, and we did sheetrocking, all of those things.
I'm pretty sure that your 3 little kids at that point were very helpful for you, right?
Super helpful when they were little. That's part of their story too. And I have a pretty powerful story about how I got them investing in real estate. But yeah, when they were little, of course, we drag them with us. We have pictures of them with the hammer when they're 18 months old, trying to, hit stuff. And and so they would come with us and they learned all the skills right along with us. But about 15 years in, I got totally burnt out because I was running everything. My husband had a W-2 job and then I was running all of these rental properties. I was the landlord. I was I'd go mow the lawns. I'd do if there was fix ups and I'd, have to manage all of that. We'd go and shovel the walks in the snow. and dragging all the kids with me, and I just complete burnout. And I just looked at my husband. I said, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. And so we paused for a while, and then I decided to go back to school and get my MBA because I wanted to get a good corporate job. And so then I jumped into the corporate world for a couple of years, or about 3 years. And 3 years in, I worked in HR and tech. I started realizing there's no way this corporate job's going to make me $1 million. It's just not going to happen. And I knew exactly, because when you study compensation in corporations, you know how long it's going to take to get to a certain compensation, because you can see the numbers. And I was like, oh yeah, this is a problem. We gotta get back into investing. But I knew I didn't want to do it the same way. And so I had always had on my vision board buy an apartment complex. And I was trying to figure out how to do that. And I was looking up apartment complexes. I'm like, oh no, they cost millions of dollars. But up till this time, we'd never bought a property that was more than maybe $300,000.
Hmm.
And then I look at my bank account and I'm like, yeah, no, not $1 million in there. How in the world do you buy an apartment complex? Because remember, I was stuck in DIY mode. And then I realized, oh, it's actually very few people buy them on their own, or they do, but not until they have already achieved a certain level of wealth. And then you can buy them on your own. It's actually a group of people that buys them together, and then you share in the profits. And I was fascinated by that concept. And so we sold some of our properties to roll some money into our first group investment. And as a passive investor, totally fell in love with that. And I knew there were other burnt out landlords just like me out there who still believed in real estate, but were so burnt out, like they didn't want to do anymore, who needed these types of investments. And so that's why I launched Steady Stream Investments. That was a really long story about how Steady Stream Investments came to be. But that's why I launched Steady Stream Investments, so I could educate other people and then provide them a way to invest in groups like this too.
Yeah, that's great. It's interesting that you kind of came to that same conclusion where you realized, driving around in your local city or community, looking at all these apartments and coming to the realization that many of those apartments are not owned by one individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're really largely owned, by multiple individuals that come together and pool their investment money together, to really acquire, those assets. And I kind of had that same, epiphany moment, myself. Also interesting to hear that you are a fellow fix and flipper as well. My wife and I did the exact same thing back in 2012 to really supplement her income so she could stay at home with the kids. And so she was largely responsible for, a lot of the kind of managing, of those fix and flip efforts, with the contractor. And, she had a knack for interior design work. So that was kind of, what she did, during that time frame. But then like you, we started having, more and more kids, and it became very difficult, for us to manage, those fix and flip efforts, while myself having a full-time, W-2 job. And then my wife, obviously, being what we refer to as the CHO. I know you mentioned the CFO of your home. The CHO is the chief home officer, right?
I love it. I love it.
So that's great. Well, tell me a little bit. I know that you're, one of the focuses that you have, I think, as it pertains to steady stream investments, is to really focus on the education of passive real estate investing, specifically to, kind of the Gen X, women demographic.
Mm-hmm.
But I also believe that you're also very much in support of, teaching, children about the benefits of passive real estate investing as well, so that when they become, our age, they will have maybe gotten their start, 10 years
Mm-hmm.
earlier than we did. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So I've been very intentional with my own children about teaching them how money works, teaching them healthy money mindset, and teaching them how to invest young, So we actually, when the kids were 5, we started our own family bank. And so I developed this um, system called the family bank, where it was a system where the kids would earn money. Then we would practice healthy money habits like giving, long-term saving, investing, and then spending, right? And so when they were little, we worked through that, and then as they got a little bit older and as in teenagers, we layered in budgeting and bigger investing and entrepreneurship. And so we were very keen on helping the kids really learn these skills so they could be better off than us. I mean, I had to learn everything on my own, and I was just literally DIYing. And when I was learning in my early 20s, there were not podcasts to learn from, or YouTube wasn't that big to learn from either. And so it was just books. I was just learning from books. I was just reading books as much as I could and trying to figure it out. But now there's so many resources. And so with our kids, we started them out young. When they got older into their teenage years, we flipped a house with them, and where they worked hard, right? So it's not like we just gave them money to invest. They had to work, and now the kids, they all know how to do sheetrock and baseboards and tile, and I mean all the things. They know a lot. Now, are they super skilled at it? No, not yet, but they know how, and they can help out a lot, especially as they get to be teenagers. So, and we have the benefit of working together as a family, and that brings a ton of really cool benefits to your family. And so during COVID, so COVID struck, and of course we're home. We lived in Phoenix at the time. Phoenix totally shut down. We had to just be in our house. And so we're like, well, let's flip a house. And so we got a house and with the kids, and we just worked on that like 12 hours a day. We would go and we just work on this house with the kids. And funny enough, Home Depot was open during all of COVID. So it was okay that we could get our supplies that we needed. And the kids put in a ton of work. Now, we did well on that flip, and that flip made us over 6 figures. So after we sold that one, we used a tax strategy where we shifted income to the kids. And at the time we could shift $12,000 per kid. And so I have 5 kids, right? That's $60,000 that we shifted, that's just tax free. Then we told the kids, we said, okay, each of you are getting this $12,000. And of course their eyeballs are really big, right? Because they didn't have 12,000 before. And we told them, okay, 10,000 is going to be set aside for the next investment, for a real estate investment. The other 2,000, you're going to, you are free to spend, right? And go through your habits and stuff. And so, my son bought a mountain bike. Because he loves mountain biking. And so the kids got to choose something big and fun to spend on they got rewarded for all their hard work. And then we went shopping. So we went and the goal was to buy a short-term rental that could double as a vacation home for our family. And we found a 3-bedroom cabin in the woods that we purchased. Each kid put in $10,000, and then mom and dad put in the rest. And now each kid is 10% owner in that property. So they have learned how active income can be shifted into passive income. And so now they're getting passive income. Their net worth is increasing because they're getting appreciation. And then every year in December, we go to the cabin and we have like a business meeting with the kids, and we go over the P&L. So last December, I brought the P&L. It was the first time. And I didn't know how the kids would react to it. I was worried that they would be like, oh my gosh, mom, math, why are you making us do like math homework? But I was surprised. The kids were so into it. They were like looking over that thing, and they were needling me with questions. Like my 12-year-old's like, Mom, why was the water bill so high in May? And I was like, well, Mom didn't pay that much attention in May, so I don't know. I didn't realize that. And so we had this really great conversation with them. And then we talked about, okay, how can we make our property more valuable next year? How can we bring in more income? And, we talked about the two ways to do that, either increase your revenue or decrease your expenses. So the kids decided to decrease expenses by taking back management. So we were hiring a property management company. They were paying 30%, and the kids are like, we can do that. We can do that. I'm like, okay, we'll do that. And then we said, okay, well, how can we increase revenue? And we talked about making your property unique and standing out. And the kids are like, Mom, we should build a tree house. And so that's what we did last summer. This last summer, we went up there and we built a giant tree house to help our properties stand out. And now we are getting more bookings because of it. So I'm excited because in a couple of weeks, we're going to go back to the cabin and we're going to have our P&L meeting again. And the kids are going to see what happened since they took back management, and then they can just, like, my teenagers, one of my daughters has just taken it full on and manages it from her phone, and interacts with the guests and sets up the lock and makes sure that the cleaners happen, and it works out. It's working out really well, and it's exciting to see the kids' net worth growing, and we calculate their net worth too. And so, after only 1 year, their net worth had almost doubled because with this property, because things are going well with it.
Camilla, that story is amazing. I think most people listening to this with young kids or kids that are now maybe older and out of the house are listening to this story thinking to themselves, why didn't we do this? Right. So my question for you is kind of twofold. Number one, I hope you write a book someday related to this story. But number two, what's the next chapter going to look like? Like, do the kids have goals in terms of where they want to take this next, or were all the lessons kind of learned at this point? So, now they're ready to kind of launch off and maybe do their own thing.
Yeah. So each kid is going to decide what they want to do. But my oldest is she's in college. She's getting her degree in computer science. And she has already made up her spreadsheet, her 5-year plan for investing. And so, computer science grads, they come out and they're almost, they're making 100 grand almost right away. Well, she doesn't need 100 grand to live on as a single person. And so she has penciled in that she's going to invest $50,000 every year into a passive apartment investment. And so that and she's just going to do that every year for 5 years. And by the time she does that, she probably won't have to work anymore because she's going to be set for life, really, right? So she has that full plan. One of my twin daughters who just graduated high school, she fell in love with flipping houses, and she wants to become a general contractor. And so she just launched her own flipping business. It's called TNT Construction. And she is learning how to interact with subcontractors and analyze houses and do all those things. And so that's her trajectory in life, is to do that. So she made a goal last summer. She wants to flip 3 houses in a year. And so house number 1 is going on the market actually next week because she's just finishing that one up. And so she's 18. She's flipping houses. And so they each got a taste of it. Now, my son is 16, and he's decided he wants to get his electrician's license and go into the trades. And I'm all for it. I'm like, great, let's do it, right? And then my other daughter, the twin sister of the future GC, she wants to be a doctor. So she's going the doctor route. But really, for all the kids, we are determined for them to make it through college debt-free, just like their dad and I did. And it's tricky. It's tricky right now, right, to do that, especially because we don't believe in paying for it for them. So I'm not a big fan of 529s, anything like that. I'm just a big fan of like full-on investing and controlling your own investments. That's why I love real estate, is because I have a lot more control, whereas the 529s and 401ks, for that matter, are very restricted investments. And so we chose not to do those with it, and instead just go all in on real estate. But yeah, so next chapter for the kids is they're working in the business right now. I mean, my daughter who launched her flipping business, sometimes the younger kids go and work for her. and they get a paycheck, and then we go through that whole thing, and she's negotiating ownership with us now too, instead of like just the paycheck. And so she's learning how the trade-offs from getting a paycheck versus just working and then getting the lump sum at the end. What's better, what's not. So there's a lot of learning lessons that are still happening. um, and yeah, and I'm trying to encourage them to, like, so my 18-year-old daughter, she does have her own Instagram. It's called Come Flip with Tea. And so she has that, and she's just trying to educate others. And she presented at a church group that we had the other day, where it was like a what do they call it? A career fair. So she
Yeah,
was a presenter at the career fair,
right.
and all these girls came up and were looking at her hammers, and of course you got the beauticians all around, and it was for girls. It was for teenage girls, and she's there with a hammer and nail, and she's had a task for them to try and nail in hammers. And so there's a lot. It's pretty cool to see the kids take their own path, but also they're very intentional with their money too.
No. Well, that the reason for all of that is because of, what you've largely done to kind of, bring them along this journey with you. And I think that, in and of itself is probably the most powerful thing, that a parent can do to teach their children about financial literacy, is to really be intentional about bringing them along that journey with you. My oldest son, who's just 16 now, remembers when dad and mom were in the fix and flip business. So now that he's looking to going to college in the next year or two, he's thinking to himself, Dad, there's no way I'm living in a dorm. He says,
Yeah.
we're going to go buy a duplex, right?
Yep.
And I'm going to house hack that thing, right? And so he's already kind of thinking about, what his plans are there. So, and a lot of that's really strictly because of the byproduct of just the way that we've kind of, been able to teach them the things that we've learned,
Mhm.
outside of, the education that we maybe previously received in high school, college, or from our financial advisor. Really, it's that knowledge that we gained, to your point, by reading books on the topic, listening to podcasts, where we're able to learn that there's a whole different way of investing that doesn't exist within the confines of Wall Street, that's
Mhm.
available. So really appreciate that. Camilla, what are one or two common misconceptions that you typically hear from passive investors?
It's interesting when I talk to him, because one of the common misconceptions is that they're very afraid that they're going to lose their money, right? And I get it. And, I don't like to lose money either. And one of the things that I tell them when I talk to them is that investing is a game, and you should have you have different buckets of investments. So some of your investments should be in very safe things that can't be touched, like CDs or annuities, things like that, right? And then some of yours should be in risky stuff, right? About 20% in risky stuff. And then 60% in kind of medium risk. And to everybody has a different level of risk. And so for investors who are worried that they're going to lose their money, to them it's probably in that 20% bucket. They're like, this feels very risky for me. But I just remind them that investing is risky and does have risk. Yes, it has happened in the past that money has been lost. I've lost money in real estate. I'm sure you have too. And it's just part of the game, and it makes you a better investor as you go along. So don't worry about losing money per se. Worry more about making a good decision and educating and understanding even more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of the diversification is kind of key there. But at the same token, obviously not putting all of your eggs in one basket, because there's going to be investments that you're going to make that are going to be home runs. And there's going to be others that maybe you got a base hit, or perhaps maybe even you struck out. So very good feedback there. What is the next item on Camilla's bucket list that you'd like to either check off professionally or personally?
Yeah, so the next item professionally for me is I've been an investor most of my adult life. And so I call myself a professional investor. And that has been investing, of course, in the stock market, investing in lots of real estate. Now I moved into syndications, helping other people invest. I've launched a debt fund. So the next investment for me is actually investing in businesses. So I'm looking at business acquisition next. And how do I invest intelligently in businesses and then grow those businesses? So that's what's
great.
next for me.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'll have to have you on the show again in about 12 months from now, and you can provide some feedback to the listening audience on what you've learned related to that strategy. So thank you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of leave you with this, what's maybe one or two different ways that our listening audience can reach out to you to connect, to learn more about what you're up to?
You bet. So you can find me on social media at Camilla Jeffs. Just search Camilla Jeffs. I think I'm the only one out there in the world. So I have a unique name. So it's easy to find. LinkedIn is the absolute best place to connect with me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram. And then, you can visit my website, CamillaJeffs.com.
That's great. Well, we'll definitely put those links in the show notes. Camilla, really have appreciated having you on the show with me and for the value that you've brought the listening audience.
Thanks so much. It's been great.
Yeah, and Freedom Point podcast listeners, thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. Look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.